This episode was sponsored by Skillshare. I have a link for you to try them out for free at the end of the video. Hey, happy Friday. This week I'll talk about HMD Global, the company behind Nokia phones, deciding it wants to become a mobile carrier for some reason. I'll talk about China's first really premium electric car coming to Europe, and I'll also talk about Twitter being on an absolute roll. And since this is our 50th week of doing weekly tech knowledge quizzes with Crowd, we have decided to make a meta special edition quiz where all of the questions are about things like the Crowd app and the quiz itself. See how much of the trivia you know. Links are down in the description, and welcome to the Friday checkout. Okay, the most interesting new releases this week have to be the Samsung Galaxy Buds Laneige Neo Cushion Edition, which adds a makeup cushion and a tiny mirror onto the regular earbuds case. A genius idea in my opinion, especially for makeup-obsessed Korea. Then we have the Skydio X2, the first proper industrial drone of the US company that costs an eye-watering $11,000 and is aimed mainly at governments and big corporations in the US trying to avoid Chinese drones from the likes of DJI for sensitive projects. And finally, the Sony Xperia Pro, which just launched in Europe for a similarly eye-watering €2,499, or about $3,000. Okay then. We compile a list of all of the new products that get announced, including all relevant details every day in the Crowd app, so you can stay up to date with everything that's new and upvote the ones that you find interesting. Links are once again down in the description. Okay, and for my first story of the week, we have HMD Global announcing that they are going to become a mobile carrier of sorts. Specifically, the company officially launched their own MVNO in the UK called HMD Mobile. This means customers in the UK buying phones on the Nokia.com website directly can choose to pick up an HMD branded SIM card and mobile data plan to go along with their phone, which they can then manage from inside an HMD branded app. Of course, HMD Global didn't actually build their own network, they're renting it from an existing operator, EE, but still they appear to give discounts on their phones to customers who actually choose to go with their data plan. And I can't really decide if this is HMD's best or worst idea yet. I mean, if they actually manage to pull it off, this would theoretically be an incredible business. First, they can make money from the mobile subscription, of course, and second, they are incentivizing people to buy directly from their own website. This is called D2C or direct-to-consumer sales, and it is kind of the holy grail of making money online, as the company doing it doesn't have to share their revenues with their retailers and their carrier partners, who typically take anywhere between 10 and even up to 50% of the selling price for themselves. So, you know, doubly exciting. Everybody would love to do D2C, of course, and brands like Samsung are increasingly pushing their own direct sales channels as well, for example by keeping certain color variations as exclusives to their own online store. But of course the tricky thing here is that nothing gets retailers and mobile operators, the companies that actually sell most phones, more upset than brands prioritizing their own channels and giving others subpar deals. Especially a smaller company that isn't very dominant can easily just be dropped by all the retailers and all the mobile operators if their own direct sales channels become too dominant. So it's kind of a tricky balance to play here. Unsurprisingly, about half of the press release from HMD consisted of them making pinky promises everywhere that they're not stealing existing customers from their partners, but we'll just have to wait to see how it actually goes. Anyway, this move, together with their previously announced service where they let Nokia users buy roaming data from an app on their phones, it makes it pretty clear that the company is trying to move away from just selling phones and is trying to create basically a services business. And with MVNOs on the rise pretty much globally everywhere, it'll be interesting to see whether other phone companies, maybe Samsung, maybe Xiaomi, would follow them and create their own mobile data plans as well. Okay, my second story of the week will be a short one, and it is Chinese electric car maker NIO starting to sell their cars outside of China for the first time ever, beginning with a rollout in Norway. Now, at this point, I would love to know how many of my viewers have ever even heard of NIO. I would imagine it's not too many, so I've actually created a poll that I've linked to down in the description. Let me know if you've heard of them. Anyway, I'd argue NIO is probably China's first really premium car brand, with the company actually pricing their cars against the likes of Mercedes and BMW, and it has a rabid fan base, because apart from just making really nice cars, they also let their users swap batteries on the fly instead of just charging up, and they can even opt to buy a car with a leased battery instead of a fixed one for a lower price, and the peace of mind of not having to worry about longevity. Now, NIO is actually following domestic rival XPeng Motors, who also expanded to Norway earlier, and if you wonder why Norway, then A, Norway has the highest share of EVs in the world, pretty much by far, and B, the Norwegian sovereign fund gave NIO, quote, critical support during its initial public offering. In other words, they're pretty invested in the country. Okay, and my third and final story of the week will be that Twitter made it into the news 3 times this week in a way that I think perfectly highlights the massive changes the company is undergoing right now. Twitter started testing tip jars this week, where people can send tips to accounts that they like. They opened up Twitter Spaces to a lot more people, and the one that you have probably missed, they have also bought a little-known company called Scroll. Scroll appears to be a subscription service that lets users install a browser extension that automatically switches participating news pages to a sort of clean, ad-free reader mode, so the user can consume the news without ads and paywalls while also financially supporting them. Now, these 3 news don't seem gigantic on their own, but if you zoom out a little and if you put them into a bit of context, they actually reveal a bigger picture. Scroll is Twitter's 5th acquisition just this year, and the company that hasn't really fundamentally changed its product for what feels like a decade has suddenly found a whole new direction for itself, which it is actually moving towards very aggressively. Their last acquisition before Scroll was called, I think Review is how you pronounce them. It's basically a service that lets journalists create their own paid newsletter subscriptions, and Twitter has been somewhat clear that the end goal here is to actually turn Twitter into a proper content platform. So instead of Twitter just being a short message board where people post links to their own articles or podcasts or whatever that are actually hosted somewhere else, they want journalists and content creators to publish long-form, in-depth content directly to Twitter, be it newsletters through Review, articles through Scroll, audio conversations through Spaces, or whatever. And they also want audiences to not only consume that content in or at least through their app, but also to monetize it through Twitter as well. For monetizing, there is the tip jar that I've already talked about, of course, but Twitter has also openly talked about creating paid subscriptions for the app too, and Scroll and Review line up with that quite ideally as well. And I think this is generally a super smart strategy for Twitter. Content creators like me, but also especially journalists that actually work at big publishers, they already use Twitter as their de facto public profile on the internet anyway and have huge followings, so letting them easily monetize that would incentivize them to actually put their stuff directly on the platform. And with Twitter moving in and Substack gaining ground with paid newsletters, the rise of new platforms like Clubhouse and TikTok and our own Nebula platform, or Spotify and Apple investing heavily into podcasts, there is suddenly an unprecedented tidal wave of just money and competition in the online content creation space. I think there has never been a better time to become a new content creator than right now. I mean, when I started, there was basically only just you could choose to become a YouTuber, or maybe you could build your own blog or something. But now there's so many platforms, there's so many new formats that nobody owns yet, nobody has really mastered yet. There's just so much unclaimed ground. And if you'd like to get started with that, I think the best place to learn all of the skills for that is over at Skillshare. The Marcus Brownlee himself made an in-depth Skillshare class breaking down his video making process. The head of Anchor, the app that basically everybody uses to record and publish podcasts, has made a podcasting masterclass on Skillshare. Polymatter has classes on how to research and write video essays or how to make kick-ass thumbnails. There are great tutorials for every major video editing and graphics design tool. You can learn how to design your own logo from one of my favorite teachers ever, the legendary Aaron Draplin. There is a high-quality class for everything that you need to get started, no matter which medium you choose, and my viewers have already spent 14,000 hours learning stuff on Skillshare. That's a lot of tutorials. The first 1,000 people to use my link in the description will get a free trial to Skillshare Premium, and if you choose to keep your membership, it's less than $10 a month for an annual subscription. So check it out, happy learning, and I'll see you next Friday.